And people say, you know, what about the power? Has it got enough power? Well, oh yeah. Right, good morning everybody. Well, I'll put my lid down, it's getting a bit windy. So, what are we doing today? Well, as you can see, I'm out on the Hunter. I've not been out on the Hunter for a while. And the reason I decided to come out on is because the episode I did the other day, looking at like bikes like the Classic 350 and this as such, as a bike to sort of end your riding career on, if you like, because they're easier to handle and maintain and all the rest of it. You know, I was looking at the prices of these and thinking, good grief, that's a cheap bike now. You know, as a second-hand bike, it's amazingly good value. And I'm not sure why the prices have dipped so much, but I thought it was worth another look. And why I think it's such a great bike for any type of rider, really, whether you're a new rider, someone a little bit older that wants to scale down on their bikes, and also not being sexist at all, for female riders. You know, Karen rides this bike. This is her steed. You know, she loves this bike and it rides so well, even though we did do stuff to the seat, which I'll show you when we do the little look round. But what a great bit of kit and what a good looking bike. So we're going to head off to the new Sussex Pond, another place I've found, which is not always the quietest. So I end up sort of recording about 5 times before I get the bit that I want. But let's have a look at the bike and then we'll come and do a bit more riding round. So here we are, the Hunter 350. I know people call it the HNTR. I think it's just because they couldn't fit it in on the plate on the side. It's the Hunter 350, isn't it? Because Enfield tend to do that Hunter shotgun, you know, it's all around sort of shooting, isn't it? Anyway, so I make no apologies coming back to the Hunter. It's a very popular bike and it's one that I think is worth another look. Because when I did the episode the other week about you know, what bikes might keep you in the game a little bit longer when you're getting a little bit older and you want something lighter to be able to move around and that the Hunter came up in that. And when you look at it as a bike, you sort of think, wow, isn't that a cracking looking bike? And this is what I call modern retro rather than a modern classic. Even though it's an all sort of new bike in terms of its styling. I was really excited when Enfield made this bike because I thought, oh, wouldn't that be interesting if they put the 650 engine in this at the time, but they went a different route really. But I think in this styling, it was so on trend at the time because to my mind, it's a mini Bonneville, isn't it? It just looks like a miniature Bonneville. And I think I think I'm fairly safe to say that the designers that Enfield had at the time were ex-Triumph people. So they're designers. So I seem to remember watching something where they put the Street Twin, you know, they did the outline of the Street Twin and they put this over it. It was like someone just got some tracing paper. You know, the Chinese are great at that. You might as well let the Indians do it as well. So I thought we'd have a look at the Hunter again and why it's such a great bike for people coming into the pastime, if you like, of riding. What makes it a good commuter, what makes it good for younger riders, older riders, female riders, and just riders in general. And looking at those great value options you've got now on this. Because I just think it is a stunning bike. And just plodding out on it this morning, it just reminded me how cool it is. And also how different it is to the Classic 350, even though we're using very similar platform, same engine. it feels totally different, and the engine responds differently as well because it has slightly different tuning. So let's go and have a trundle round and have a chat about it while I ride, and then stop and look at the bike in detail and the things we did to this bike just to make it, a bit more personal to us. Come on then. So what about the handling then? Well, it's quite sharp, it's quite quick. Compared to the classic 350, it's a very different bike. And I think it's not as different that it catches me out on this. So I've had some bikes where, I go from one bike to the other, and the handling is so sharp that it catches you out slightly and you turn in a little bit too quick. On this, it doesn't do that, and it feels, I'm not going to say neutral, but it just feels very, very straightforward. It does flatter you a little bit, this bike. It is so easy to ride. The brakes, though, brake-wise, fantastic. I still maintain that these are the best brakes I've got on any of the bikes I have, or they certainly work better with this bike than any other that I've got. And I've had quite a few of the Byberries, obviously, on my bikes. But my Harley and my Bonnevilles and all the rest of it, the front brake on this is fantastic. It's an impressive piece of kit. As I said, the tyres are the Seats, and I'm not a huge lover of those Seat tyres. They do the job, and they do seem to have worn quite well on this one, where my Interceptor, they were terrible, and then ended up changing them out. These we will change out eventually, and I have noticed that they do those Batlax tyres for this, which are very good, but maybe some BT46s if they do them in the right size. But control wise and the dial and everything, just the things you have to live with every day on this bike are so straightforward and simple. There's no complexity about this bike at all. And isn't that what we want when we sort of, start riding or finish riding? We want a bike that's simple to maintain, simple to look after, simple to clean. There's no, huge amount of electronics to worry about on a bike like this. And that's why I think it serves that purpose really well. So what about the suspension on this bike then? Well, I think it's okay. The only thing I would criticise it slightly for, I think it's a bit too harsh on the front. The rear is okay, and obviously you can adjust that, the preload and stuff. But I think it is a little bit fierce on the front. It's not horribly so, but the interesting thing, I was out on the Classic 350 on Saturday, and I went down about a 2 mile sort of track, which is really potholed and gravelly and all the rest of it, and you realise how good the suspension is on that, and how perfectly it was set up for the environment it was built for, which is India basically, because the roads in India are pretty shocking. But never have I had a bike that was so perfectly set up suspension wise for the environment it was built for. This I should think would be quite a little bit harsh in that environment, and I don't know why they needed to do that. I think they could have made it just as compliant as the Classic 350. So let's look at the features that we did on this bike, which sort of makes it a bit more personal. And a lot of these were already done when I bought this bike, because if you remember, we've had this quite a while now, and the bike itself had just had its first service. It had done 400 miles, and we put more than 10 times that in it now. So it's gone over 4,000 miles, this bike, and it's still fabulous. So let's have a look at the bits that were on the bike when we got it, and the bits that I've added. So we had the bar end mirrors. These are the Enfield bar end mirrors, and they're quite nice quality actually. The only thing I would say from memory, I know they're not actually, I thought these were rusty, but these are really nice quality. They're proper Enfield ones, and nicely made, and you get a really good rear view off these. It's got the little fly screen. Again, that was already on the bike. I put a lot of fly screens on my little bikes like this, not just to give me a little bit of protection, but also to protect the clocks from moisture. It had the clear indicators. Now I have got the original indicators with this. I sort of thought maybe the originals might be better, but I've left it as it is, but we can change it back if we need to. We got the sump guard on here, which is a nice addition, isn't it, really? And it's nice in black because I like all the matte black. I did put bar risers on this, for me in particular, but Karen's quite happy with those. But yeah, I put bar risers on just to bring it back a little bit. Again, you got the clear indicators on the back. And then we put the pannier racks on. Now these were the relatively cheap pannier racks. They come from India. You know, I think they were about £40 or something. But they're fine. They do the job. All a bit over to one side there. I can't remember if we've laid this down once. Oh, I have laid it down once, haven't I? It's in my intro. But they did get scratched, but I just rubbed them down and redid those. And then we put these little fake leather panniers on. But they're great. You know, you can get like a, you know, what is it, 2 litres of milk and a loaf of bread in there. You know, what more do you want? The other big thing that I put on, which we change for Karen. So this isn't the original seat. This is the signature seat. Again, it's an Enfield product, but I just love the straightness of that, and it's the bench style, and I think it transforms the look of this bike really. You'll see it on the screen, and you see the Karen seat, which I took the foam out and then sculpted it for her. So now she can flat foot this no problem whatsoever. The other bits on the bike that you get, which are really handy, obviously you get the centre stand in common with all Enfields. I think it's only the Bear, isn't it? I think it doesn't have the centre stand, but the centre stand is really handy for maintenance. We've also got the tripper navigation on here. Now, I will say I'm not a big fan. I've tried this. I had it on my Scram in France and the rest of it, and it's not for me. I'm not a great lover of it. Similar to the B-Line, I think they probably improved it, but I don't find it very intuitive. But apart from that, you know, you could say it's stock. It's fairly unstock, isn't it, really? But all those parts didn't mount up to a lot of money. The seat, I think, was £95, and it is a lovely seat. And I say the panniers and all the rest of it probably came to about another 60 quid, I think, £65. All your other little bits and pieces, like the mirrors and this stuff, which are all Enfield parts, you know, are going to be a little bit more expensive. But nothing Enfield's dear, is it really? But what it does, it gives you you know, it just finishes off the bike really. Just gives it a bit more presence on the road, and I think it just looks lovely at that. So when you think about the gearbox, you know, I've never had a problem really with any of my Enfield gearboxes. They've always been really good. I'm not saying they're slick, but they are positive, and that's all you need. I don't get false neutrals, anything like that. Really good in that respect. And the other thing with the gearboxes on the J series engines, you never feel like you've run out of gears. Even though the Hunter, out of the three, because you've got the Meteor, this and the Classic 350, the Classic 350, sorry, has got more legs than this gears wise, and you get to the in top quicker than you do on the Classic, but you don't really feel you've run out of gears. And I think you sacrifice a little bit of the legs just to give you that extra little bit of punch that people that certainly young riders might appreciate with a bike like this. You know, otherwise you just end up with a Classic 650 in a different dress, or you get, you know, it's just made to look different, but it feels exactly the same to the ride. And with this one, it feels totally different to ride. There's nothing on this bike that makes me feel I'm on a Classic 350, which is really, really nice. The other thing is that the clutch is incredibly light. The clutch is light in common with the J series. You know, how they make the clutches that light, I don't know. And it also shares that other thing that I find with a lot of Enfields, is the width of the actual lever. So you get a nice contact point with the fingers, which gives you loads of power when you're pulling particularly the brake, but the clutch as well. And a lot of manufacturers sort of miss that. I don't know why, but Enfield seem to have got it perfect. You know, they know that if you've got plenty of contact point, that it's easier to pull the lever back, you know. And this is the first bike that I really noticed that with on these. Really good levers on these. And people say, you know, what about the power? Has it got enough power? Well, oh yeah, it has. And this bike's been well run in now, you know, and it accelerates perfectly, and it does have a different throttle response to the classic. You know, there's a more urgency to it. It's more punchy, and that's where, you know, I think they've done such a great job of differentiating it between the two. You know, those things are infinitely doable. And it does, it you know, it punches along really lovely. I know when Karen's been out on group rides on this bike, and she's had much bigger bikes following her, and she said, blimey, I struggled to keep up with you. But, you know, Karen's only a slight little thing, and you know, her lack of weight just makes it, you know, allows the bike to punch a little bit quicker. With me on it, you know, I mean, I know I'm only like a supermodel, you know, waif-like, but even with me on it, it still punches along really well. It really does. So is there anything else on the market that gives you this particular style and, you know, just sort of level of feel, if you like? And to be honest, it's probably only the GB350, the Honda, in that price range, isn't it really? So the GB350 was a really direct competitor to this. I didn't see it as a competitor to the classic 350, it's more to this, because this was one of the best selling bikes in the market. So I think as a looker, there's not much between them. The GB is a bigger bike than this, or it feels a bigger bike than this. I know when I've ridden it a couple of times, and you know, there's not much between the two of them. But I think the biggest plus point on this at the moment is the second-hand values. I don't think you're going to find a GB350 second-hand which is going to be much less than its new price, really, because what you'll tend to find with the GB, people will have spec'd it up a little bit, so it's going to keep the prices high. If you're going to buy one, you might as well buy a new one. With these bikes in the 2000 class price range, is phenomenal value. And the couple that I saw online this morning, you know, neither of them had more than 2,000 miles on, which is nothing, is it? So again, you've saved that issue of, not that it's a great pain, of getting the first service done, getting the valve check done. And that's another point, isn't it, really, the valve check on this. Before my local dealer went down, sadly, although they've re-emerged, I just got the valve check done on this, didn't have to do anything. I didn't need to change the oil, I was doing that. But the valve check was only £80. You know, although you have to leave it with them overnight because it's, you know, you got to let the engine cool down. But, you know, it's pretty cheap, isn't it? I would say that's probably the only problem I find with Enfields, because of the engines that they use. You've still got this valve clearance stuff to do. It's something I'll bring up about the Harley when I do the review on the Harley tomorrow. Is, you know, hydraulic tappets, there's no valve clearances to worry about because it's self-adjusting. You know, what a joy that is. That saves you a lot of money, doesn't it? And although this is relatively simple, you're still got to have the tank off and fiddle around with it before you can get to the, before you can take the head off. But, you know, it's still a very, very cheap bike to run. Fuel economy is phenomenal. You know, you feel like we filled out when we got it and we've not touched it since. I don't know what the economy is, but it's well over 100 miles to the gallon easily, well over 100 miles to the gallon. And it's a good sized tank as well. So really, really impressive. So would I recommend it to all groups? Yes. I don't think there's a bike that I could recommend to all groups more than this. As an introduction to retro styling, price, it's not going to break the bank, it's cheap to insure, cheap to run. Is there anything that I would recommend to change on the bike as an off? Probably the tyre. You know, the tyres on this, the bike's not mega heavy, and these do have the Seat tyres on, which I'm not that mad about. But these have actually worn quite well, to be honest with you. Even at 4,000 miles, they're still looking really, really good. The other great thing about this bike is the brakes, which I spoke about on the ride round. But as a piece of kit, I don't think there's much that can touch it for the price at the moment. you know. And as a bike that if you buy as a project to do is turn into like a scrambler or something or whatever, how cool is that? What a nice bike to work on. It's really simple. So there we are. That's the little look at the Hunter again. I just think they're really worth looking at the moment for their price. And they're just that ease of use. You know, as I said on the ride around, what an easy bike to ride. It really is. Right, I hope you enjoyed that little snippet for our Wednesday episode. And I will see you in the next one. Take care, everybody.